Alrighty. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This is going to be, Trading Monthly Recap October 2024. $145,850.82. Really, really good month. If there's any one month that's not in the December, January, or February period that I think is a really good month for me historically, October is one of them. And so I didn't really expect to come out with a six-figure month, but very happy and maybe not surprised that it happened. But yeah, a lot of opportunities, as I mentioned on Twitter. Again, there was no one massive trade that really created the bulk, I would say, of this month. There are some trades that definitely helped out significantly, but I do think there were some opportunities this month that could have led to a 30, 40, 50, 60K kind of profit. However, it didn't really happen on the ones I thought, and we will obviously go into why that is. But ultimately, overall, I'm very happy with the month. Win rate's good. Risk reward on average here is not so good, but honestly, there's a few reasons for that, and I actually did mention that on Twitter as well. Average losses is a little bit higher because I want it to be. I'm actually starting to risk more on average and slowly increasing that over time. Average win is on the lower end than what I would expect because there's about a few wins in here that just turned into like scratch profits. And so if you have enough of them, instead of being in the $8 or $9 range, it brought it down significantly because there's about 5 or 10 trades that are like, I don't know, $200 profit where it's like, arguably I could have them just be a zero and it wouldn't matter because they're so insignificant. But naturally, they bring the average down. So there's that. But anyways, I can babble on all I want. Without further ado, let's jump right in. I imagine this recap will be a little bit long. We have a lot of trades and then a lot of, I think, really good lessons from said trades. So obviously week one. Week one, not great. Started off red and it was red $500, but you see it was red pretty significantly from Thursday. And not only that, but actually this this week could have been much, much worse because I actually covered a long-term swing, which made up for for a big loser that I took on actually Monday on Tuesday on the 1st. So had I not actually locked in that winner, we could be easily down, call it 20, 30K plus on the first week, but I'm happy it didn't. So let's go over why that is. Number one, Duo. Started off a lovely, lovely big loss. Bigger than I wanted, I should say. It wasn't that big. It was negative 18 grand. It was big to me because it was a full 180. I went from up 18 grand to down 18 grand. And it's on the 1st of October. If we go in here real quick. 1st of October, and anyone who traded this remembers exactly what I'm talking about, where out the open, didn't have a very strong morning spike, immediately died. I remember getting short pretty much full size by the time this halted down. Did cover, I don't know, maybe 20% max into this pull. I did think 250 was roughly the area I wanted to cover. And that was my biggest mistake, is that I told myself 250, but then when we got to 250, I said, no, let's not cover most. Let's cover actually like significantly less. And then I remember adding that whatever I covered into this move into 250, covered it or reshorted it right back into the high twos as it was approaching 3. And then we got kind of this massive, massive move after being down almost 20% of the day to then being up 20% of the day, breaking this morning spike high. I covered and lost money. Then reshorted, revenge trading. Okay, that squeezed everyone out. Let's get reshort for a fade back to the lows. That didn't, anything but that happened. And then it, came back and I covered again for pretty much doubling the loss that I already took, turning myself into up 20K at the lows to then down almost 20K on the trade in total. So once that happened, I actually never touched it the rest of the day. And just to show you the trades here, see a lot of trades here. We're going to go through all of these. These are the trades here. Like I said, got short, covered, re-added the bounce, covered again, getting squeezed, reshorted again, and lost more than I needed to. Never touched it again, even though they did an offering. But even doing the offering, this thing literally came back to right before it did the offering. Very, very annoying. And then if you look at the daily chart, I actually had never touched this ticker since. That move particularly put such a bad taste in my mouth, and I just lost way too much, or I should say gave back too much on top of the loss, that I never verbally blacklisted it, but I definitely mentally did because I never touched it again. They ended up doing not one offering, but 2 and then 3 offerings to take it pretty much back to the lows of almost where the run started, and a pretty impressive round trip over the course of this run. But I am left with being negative 18K on the ticker from this one day. Like I said, never touching it again. So bit unfortunate, but it is what it is. It set the wrong foot off to start the month. However, in that same day, I then also equally decided to cover my Mullen swing. Swing shorting has been something I've taken much more seriously coming into 2024. There's always been various tickers that I have swung short that are more like true pump and dumps. These are not necessarily pump and dumps. They're just tickers that are super, super dilutive, very, very history of dilution. If we go back on Mullen, 4 years is probably not long enough, but it was never trading at $35 million a share. They have done reverse split after reverse split after reverse split, dilution after dilution after dilution, over and over and over again, rinse repeat, to where it just gets crushed. And recently in September, on September 17th, they repeated that cycle again, did another reverse split along with a ton of dilution. So ergo, I'm getting short in the 12s and 11s. I think it ended up having an 11 average total by September 17th, and then swung it down pretty much until October 1st. So really clean 2 weeks. I mean, literally every day was red until the first green candle. And it wasn't necessarily my plan to cover on the first green candle. I just thought to myself, I just got about 70% of a down move in 2 weeks. The dilution I thought they had that were selling, I imagine, was probably drying up. At least the specific dilution that I thought they were going to use. And then I thought to myself, in the event this does bounce back in any way, shape, or form, because although it does go pretty much straight down over the long term, in the short term, I mean, you can get some moves that bounce back, call it 100% from the lows. It wouldn't be 100% back to my position, but it could, there's some bounces here that would be uncomfortable to hold through. So I decided, let's lock it in. And if it ever spikes again, I will get reshort. And so I did cover it on this little red or this green candle day. Unfortunately, it actually not bounced like I expected. And, I'm still happy with this coverage, because really I would have had to wait a whole nother month, now being in early November, to catch it being, pretty much $1 a share lower. And so the selling definitely slowed down, right? It's much more sideways, and now it's starting to roll over, versus I couldn't have asked for the easiest 2 weeks worth of straight down. So did lock in about 24K there. And so we brought ourselves a full round trip to now green again. I think there's another profit here, but it wasn't anything spectacular to get me to 15K in the day. So next is the rest of the week. I then also made 12K on LX. And let's keep getting rid of these as we go along here. LX, this was actually live on Good Morning NASDAQ. The ending of the trade wasn't, but the beginning of it was on October 2nd here. If we just go into the trade, not thrilled how I traded it, because if you watch that live stream, I nailed the top, covered it into this higher low, and it wasn't really recognizing that it was a higher low, and then reshorted much, much lower. Had I just kept the original shares and then actually added to a winner, this could have been much, much bigger than 12K. But even for covering and reshorting, I then did still trade I exited pretty well. If we go into the actual chart there. And sorry, this is Mullen's. This is me just covering the shares on a daily chart perspective. Unfortunately, I kind of wish DAS kept the entries from days ago if you wanted to. Maybe it's a setting that I just didn't know existed. I don't think it's a thing, though. But yeah, this is not me buying. This is clearly me covering from up in the 10, 11 area. So there's that. LX, yeah. So this is the trade here. Really happy with these covers. Like I said, pretty much got the last piece out towards the last significant panic. But again, this is the entry I don't love, where I pretty much nailed the top, covered covered us I think a fourth here live, and then covered the rest thinking it was going to spike to new highs, kind of getting scared out, only to chase, what is that, probably 40 cents lower, 30 cents lower, and then covering a little bit, adding some more. And frankly, I just don't love that I didn't get into strength. I really wish, hypothetically, other trade around, don't cover it all here, add into these actual bounces into strength, could have had a way better average, which much more size. And then I don't mind any of these covers here. These are still good. So locked in 12K, coulda, shoulda, would have been, I don't know, maybe something more in the 20K range. But overall happy I traded in general. Where things went really bad, and that what led to then this kind of a day, the worst red day of the month. I pretty much went 0-for-7 here, guys. I took 7 losses of 5 to 6K each, maybe some in the more 9K range and some in the lower 3K range, but on average, just took too many losers in a row. Very rare for that to happen to me, but it can. And today was one of them. And arguably it was because I pretty much took the same trade across the entire China sector. And again, if you remember the beginning of the month, China put out kind of a stimulus package. So all these China tickers were running, right? If you notice, LX, TIGR, FUTU, they all have the same similar daily chart. And my biggest mistake was, one, not longing them, right? Not kind of, because I knew the news came out fairly early on all of these, pretty much late September. Why I didn't jump immediately on board long, I don't know. Naturally, I'm short bias, so I just kind of maybe said to myself, let's see if they even run in the first place. They did. And then the first day, they're all gapping down across the board, right? So that's this day on, October 3rd for LX. This day right here, October 3rd for TIGR. Thankfully, it went much higher. We'll talk about that in a moment. But on this day, also got short. And then FUTU also got short. And as you notice, they just ripped right back green that morning. If we go into the actual trades real quick, I'll just show the intraday briefly, or the intraday. Yeah. Got short, squeezed, right? Let's go to this one. October 3rd, right? Red green, I think, was somewhere around 8 or the 8 somewhere, high 7s. Got short, squeezed. And then FUTU, go to October 3rd. Just to show you. And these are just 3 of the losses. There were 4 others as well. Got short, squeezed. And so it's not typical that I take that exact same sector. If honestly, I probably should have picked just one of them that I thought was maybe the best and to risk more. Either way, it would still have been a loser. But when I reflect on this, it makes me think I didn't really need to be that exposed to the entire sector. If I take one, I kind of take them all. And I did take them all and I lost all of them. So that was what happened here. And so to show you the actual trades, right? LX getting short. Don't love these entries they started in, pretty low. Don't mind this one because risk reward was technically worth it, but the odds were obviously low. Stopped out. Okay. TIGR. This one's even a little more frustrating because I did stop out correctly, but then I reshorted thinking that, this is kind of getting too much too soon. There should be a pullback to at least VWAP. And of course, I'm just one uptick too early. I cover a new high a day. That's the high of the day for at least the morning session, and then actually get to that pullback. So unfortunately, this was a little bit bigger of a loser. I think I ended up losing, was it almost 9K on this one specifically instead of like 4 or 5. So this top entry here doubled my loss, unfortunately. And then FUTU, same idea. Same thing here. Tried to get a pullback, didn't immediately cut it. But I think this loss was only maybe another grand or two more than the original few grand I lost. So lost, 6K on this one. I think 4K here, 2K there. Either way, you add them all up. These are just half of them. But, you get the picture, right? It was not a fun morning for me pretty much by the end of the first 2 hours of the day. I was like, oh, well, we're down 30 grand. I think I should stop. And that's pretty much what I did. So there's that one. That's pretty much the week. Loading into week 2, and I think you notice it here on TIGR, especially the daily chart, that I briefly mentioned, it kept going. The squeeze continued even further. So instead of shorting in the 8s, it ends up going to 14. And so this is where I do make some money back. I end up making around just under 10K on this one, but this one is also frustrating because I actually, again, lost money, lost 10K and then made 10K back. So, happy I'm green on it, but I'm annoyed, and I'll show you exactly why I'm annoyed. October, we can probably just go to the full month intraday, and show you. This one pulled a move that I think most tickers shouldn't do, and part of me kind of saw it coming, but my nature in trading is to not. I'm not the trader who's going to see something in the price action and then immediately deviate from my plan. I tend to stick to my plan no matter what, then try to make split-second decisions based on price action, because in the event I make a decision based on price action and it actually helps me, I'd be like, okay, great, it helped me, hip, hip, hooray. But if I make a split decision and it hurts me, I get tilted very quickly. And so I've refrained from doing that. Now, on the double-edged sword there, because there are some situations like this one where I almost thought about exiting the trade entirely, which would have saved me massively, but I didn't. And so I took a loss, and then I reshorted and then ended up making money. And to show you exactly what I mean, blow off daily chart like we talked about. Took my loss here in the 8s, but 2 days later, it's always up in the 14s. I figured this was going to be a day very similar to how LX had its stop day, right? When I made 12K here, like we just talked about. I figured TIGR was going to have a similar kind of blow-off move, and it did, but this move right here resulted in a loss that was maybe bigger than I wanted. Thankfully, it didn't full-on max stop me out, right? Like a broker max stop. I still had plenty, of room to give it one more shot and risk back on, and I did make my money back. And I'll show you what I mean here when I'm talking about should I make split-second decisions. So I'm getting short. And I feel good about it, right? It immediately rejects out the open. It tries to push into view on this bounce here. It fails. And then we make a new low a day, right? This little wick that actually absorbs. I think 9 times out of 10, this should have been it. This should have died. And then when it didn't, that's one of those split-second decisions of I'm thinking, that shouldn't have happened. I probably should cover it all completely and then just reshort if it goes lower. And I think most traders would follow that lesson. However, I didn't because I knew I was going to be tilted. Instead, I covered the extra size I took on it. So this last little candle that I took extra size thinking this breakdown was going to happen, the moment it held, I just covered that extra size, but I still kept the majority of my position. Right? In hindsight, this looks like a really good cover because since then it went straight up and then stopped me out over high day. I got stopped out. I tried to reshort. I don't remember. This wasn't a complete stop out. I think I emotionally started hitting the ass thinking it was going to break over high day, but then stopped. And so I was able to keep most of my shares and then add the impartial fills back. Truly sticking to the trade plan of risking the new high, then covering it into the close, reshorting this bounce into VWAP, or not into close, sorry, into this end of this panic. Kind of like the morning session, 11 a.m. typically is when maybe most selling stops for a lot of these. And then reshorting into VWAP and then covering back for total of 10K. So it's really almost like I lost about 10K on this one, made about 15K back to be up 5K, and then I remember I made 5K more on this bounce short. So risk reward here wasn't great. It was positive because I ended the trade positive, but the fact that this much smaller range of a bounce short actually made for half my gains on the day on the ticker. Again, you could hear my voice. I don't love this trade. It could have done better, but again, I don't know. I don't regret covering it all there because, again, there's a world, like I said, where I would have covered it all. Let's say it rejects VWAP one more time and then it breaks low day. I would be very pissed reshorting it, call it 50 cents lower than what I did here. Yes, it's upsetting that I took a loss maybe bigger than I wanted to over high day on a move that I think shouldn't happen 9 times out of 10. But I would be even more pissed covering it than having it not happen and then me reshorting much lower. And that's when I get emotional. I start feeling I'm like trading out to avoid losses rather than sticking to the plan. And I don't like doing that. So it's one of those ones where I just had an irregular move that I just did not expect. Maybe I should have, could have, would have risked this high, but that's pre-market. I don't really love risking pre-market levels unless there's like multiple of them. I guess if we look at the chart again, maybe there was, but not really. I guess this was the biggest volume candle of pre-market, but again, compared to the open, they're uncomparable, really. So it is what it is. It's one of those ones where I'm just annoyed with it, and it's fine. I'm happy to be green on it, but not the funnest, right? Anyway, so that was most of the China sector. I think overall I was walking away fairly red from it. I'm kind of happy. I actually remember saying it by the end of this second week here. I was very eager to look forward to a new group of tickers. I was very over the China sector in general. I did not like them or like that batch of tickers at all. I was very over it. And then so where else did the huge profits come? Because this second week I finished up 45K. The big chunk of it ended up coming from FFIE. So this one is another, very similar to Mullen, MULN, a dilutive swing short. And that's partly why I was so overly bullish on this run. Again, we've already talked about my biggest loss of my career. I've eaten my loss, taken my lessons from it. But a factor of it, and I've already mentioned, is how crappy this company actually is when it's not in this insane momentum. And that thesis is finally playing out. Okay. And so once, the crowd was gone, the run had happened, and now it's just left to fade down 99% of its highs. That's exactly what I started doing. So I started swing shorting it somewhere in here before its reverse split. Unfortunately, my big mistake was, though, I then started adding massive size after the reverse split and didn't really acknowledge the fact that this could bounce back higher than expected. And I kind of knew it. I just didn't want to acknowledge it. And so when it did bounce back here, I actually did give a significant amount of profits away and actually took some losses, but still went back to a very small swing short position. Once it died, then I started adding size back into the round 7 range. I ended up having like an 8 to 7 average. I think after I added one more time here on this bounce in the 5s, I ended up having a like 690 something average. And then I just swung it. Swung it for, pretty much from late August all the way up till mid-October here. And ultimately for the same reason of Mullen, I thought to myself, you know what, if this spikes back by any means, if this gives me another one of these or another one of these from, call it the 2s into the 4s or 5s or 6s, I'm going to be pretty upset that I don't lock something in. And especially because not only would I not want to lock some in, but I actually would want to reshort if it pops back up there for then another swing. So that's exactly what I did. What day I covered? I covered it on the 16th here. The 9th. So the 9th is where? Right here. yeah, when it started spiking a bit on this day, I thought to myself, yeah, it hasn't blown off to 4, 5, or 6 yet. But same thesis as like Mullen, like, hey, if it's going to start having some slightly stronger green days and the downward selling is starting to lessen, right? We went from going from 7 to 3 fairly quickly, and then from 6 to 3 very quickly as well. But as you can see here, the next month later or so, or sorry, 3 weeks later or so, it's the selling from 7 to 3, and now from 250 to 2. Clearly, the range and the percentage sell off to the downside is lessening. And so that's why I covered. I just said to myself, you know what, let's lock some in and let's prepare to re-short if it does bounce. Like Mullen, this also has not bounced since, but one day it probably will. And even if it is back only in the 3s or the 2s from the 1s, it is what it is. I'm happy I locked that in. And so I locked in 38K there. So that really helped out this day. Now, where else I lost money, I honestly don't remember. Nothing special at all. I think just some standard loss that I took elsewhere. Where the losses really started coming on were this week. And this specifically was on TVGN and DJT. DJT will be a very big ticker we talk about in the coming minutes of this YouTube video. But TVGN was a gap and crap back on the 14th. Really dumb loss because I just don't think it should have been needed. I did not kind of follow my trade plan on this one, and it resulted in a loser that just shouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have been a big gain, but it just wouldn't have been a huge loser. I ended up losing 9K on this trade, and I think it would have been a break-even trade had I actually followed my trade plan on it. So let's go into the monthly intraday on this one. And my mistake is, and again, if you know how I like gap and craps, I've talked about them plenty publicly. I really love waiting for some kind of breakdown. And by breakdown, I don't mean like a breakdown on the daily chart. I mean just some kind of new lower low, maybe a low a day move. Maybe you try to wait for a huge spike and then a huge stuff like death kind of move, or death candle to show momentum's like clearly backside. I'm not necessarily one to short out the open or short very quickly. However, TVGN, let's get rid of some of these charts here. We're going to look at, FFIE, same thing as Mullen. Sorry to get sidetracked, but shows me covering there. Again, wish it showed the arrows, so it would see me getting short, all up in here. But yeah, there's that. So TVGN, you'll notice I'm getting short before any kind of breakdown. There's no lower low here. There's no low of day move being made. I am just getting short just to, feel FOMO. I don't know. Maybe if I look back on the daily chart, I thought it was going to just die. It's got a couple gap and crap days where it never even got over the opening price. And so I maybe was just feeling a bit confident about it when really I had no reason to. And lo and behold, just a massive squeeze. I was risking wide on $1, ended up covering at like 105, 106, just way more slippage than I really thought. Again, only to then get short again at the lows, which is terrible. Again, thinking it was going to break this low for a lower low, didn't happen. Finally, I kind of break this, I don't want to call it a trend change, but like there's clearly this uptrend that dies, and it starts to actually round out and make some kind of significant lower low from this uptrend, like I mentioned here. And so had I waited for this entry, yes, did it not fade at all? No. But if I'm short from, call it 115, I covered like 108, 109 by the close. So it wouldn't have been a big gain by any means. Maybe I make $1,000 or $2,000 max. But I ended up losing 9K on this ticker. So it's a very big difference of the end result here. And it's all because I just was too eager and getting short for something that didn't really prove any kind of significant weakness or confirmation for me, and resulted in a loss that just wasn't needed. And I risked wide when I just maybe shouldn't have on this one. So it happens. That started off there. And then DJT here, this one's really frustrating, but it gets more frustrating, don't you worry. On this day on the 15th, I just got too eager. Without really having patience for price action to kind of play out and just show its hand. If you look at that date on the intraday real quick, it just fell apart late day, and that wasn't in my what's it called? Bingo card. After the morning action happened, I kind of totally mentally checked out from even thinking of shorting or even really looking at the price action. Even though when I finally saw it breaking this low of day move, like I was watching it, I had a chart up of it. I just didn't even think to reshort. When clearly it was a great, I didn't think it was going to go back to 25 or 26s, but like it was clearly rolling over. I mean, there's a world where this pulls another $2 or $3 a share, at least down to like from 30 to 27. Just didn't reshort. And I think it's because I exhausted myself just way too early, way too soon. I took 2 5K losers back to back within, the first 30 minutes of the day. Frankly, on levels and price action or confirmation that just wasn't there. So for me to lose 10K on just this morning chop didn't sit well with me. And I think that's the main reason why I mentally checked out, because, I'm getting short, it's pulling, I think I'm right. It gives us this big bounce straight to high a day, I cover. And that's okay. That happens. It's not a big deal for me. Where I get upset is that the moment it fails, I just immediately reshort it. I don't wait for a lower low. I don't wait for it to hold at our VWAP. I don't give it time to like scale into a winner as it's like breaking down further. My average would be lower in that instance, but I would at least be waiting for like actual high odds scenario. Instead, I just go full size once again immediately on this pullback, and then I just cover again. Like I set a risk that got set 5 minutes ago. I didn't even give it like 15, 20, 30 minutes to like really maybe prove that that's a level I could risk off now. And so naturally, of course it breaks. And it breaks it a few more times. It wasn't until then, if I had given it, 20, 30 minutes, I can then realize, okay, this is clearly a high that matters. Even an hour plus later, okay, now there's like a double top kind of thing. You let it trade all after or all midday into late day. It's like, had I been more patient, I can then be like, okay, I now have a much better level to risk off of. Maybe it doesn't make sense for me to short in the mid-range here, but once this started breaking down really significantly below 31 here, and then now below the morning lows, 31 to 30 was really that level. I don't really have an excuse why I shouldn't have reshorted, other than the fact that I just exhausted myself, which is an excuse. It's just a fact. It just happened. So kind of annoying, because this was a very nice downside move. Certainly could have turned into a winner. Like I said, I checked out. I just didn't short it. So not fun. Ended up down 10K on that trade there. However, the month started picking around here, because frankly, after the first 15 days of October, I am green on the month. However, I can't help but acknowledge that if I didn't cover Mullen and I didn't cover FFIE, that's what, a 38K gain and a 25K gain. That's like 60K plus, and I'm only up at this point with, after some borrows, I'm only up like maybe a little over 40 grand. It's like, I know in my brain, day trading wise, I am red. Yes, the swings are making me green, but like the swings aren't very common. They're far and few between. It's the day trading that that is my day job, right? And so I did not feel good about October leading so far. I was like, okay, I am technically red on the day trades. Sure, the swing trades feel nice and keep me somewhat comfortable, but I still feel irritated by how I'm trading and dealing and handling this month. Thankfully, this is when drug came around. And I don't have a chart up of it because I rarely traded it, and it barely, I think I'm break even on it. I didn't even make any huge gains or losses on it, thankfully. I know a lot of short sellers took some very big losers on this one, so I apologize for, or my condolences to anyone who took a lot of losses, because that certainly was the case here. This really brought in the momentum. And I mean really brought in the momentum. It went from me being frustrated and not getting much done to drug going nuts. And then now there was 2, 3, 4, 5 gappers a day that were gapping up 100% plus. And as someone who's tried to take or has taken gap and crap short selling much more serious this year, it became, almost a playground for me. It started working out very, very well. I think gap and craps are one of the biggest contributors to this month. Again, no one huge winner, but like, if the 16th is when it started, there was another 10 to 20 gap and craps that offered a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10K plus winner here. And so that really added to the bottom line, even though there was no any one big winner. You add, call it 7K winners, all of a sudden you're up 50 grand, 40 something grand, right? Or what's 7 times 7? I've got to go back to my 40 something grand. 42, right? So yeah, some of those biggest winners were VS. VS is actually, a perfect example of this one, because VS ran huge when TNSP ran huge. If you remember that last year in October, ironically, perfectly a year later, October 2023, was it TNSP or TSPS? I don't remember. TSP, whatever, the ticker I'm talking about. Ran from 15 cents to like $10. VS the next day runs, I think it did a reverse split, but it went from, up hundreds of percent to then giving it all the way back down to the lows. And lo and behold, it gave you almost a mirror image of what happened. Now, the one mistake I made here was that I think I was distracted with something. Instead of shorting it into the parabolic, I just waited till it died in hindsight. And as this was selling off, I was like, Kyle, you idiot. Why am I not shorting into this move? Like, so far it's in a mirror image just from the morning. Like, I'm pretty sure it's going to do the same thing. And so unfortunately didn't get a lot of size or any size up here, but then did start shorting it here. And this looks like a terrible chase, but that's just how convicted I was in the ultimate ending of this ticker. And that's exactly what happened, right? I was able to get short at 6, pretty much covered sub 4, locked in 13K. Again, my only should have, could have, would have been to just take this size and short it pretty much at 8 instead of 6. Again, I wish I took better notes or better journaling, because I forget why I was distracted. Maybe I was doing a webinar, or I was ending a webinar, or something was happening to where I just was not mentally all there at this very moment at the high, which I was, because if I was, I would have been like, yeah, looking back at the daily chart and been like, yeah, this is gonna pull massively. But anyways, that was my biggest gap and crap profit of the month at 13K. Then there was ANTF, same idea. Got short somewhere in here. Let's just pull, instead of pulling at the daily, let's just look at the intraday here. Where is it? Do we not have it there? ANTF. Let's pull it up real quick, guys. Let's pull it up. I'm pretty sure we did. Yeah, ANTF right here. ANTF. Oh, sorry, I canceled it out. Duh. This looks like VS to me. ANTF, same thing. Really waited for. Some people call this a lot of chasing, but again, that's kind of my style. I'm okay getting short much, much lower for a much higher win rate kind of day on gap and craps. Arguably could have gotten short, higher, like I said, in maybe more after this lower high got set. For whatever reason, again, also probably similarly distracted like VS on ANTF, just waited to get short here, but then massive fade. Even then chasing, I'm still getting short at 11, covering at the 5s, a whole 50%, downside move. Locked in 9K there. Then there's also NXX or NIXX, same idea. This one, not too much of a bigger spike, actually tried to spike, but then pulled, shorted on this kind of new lower low kind of being made right into that lower wick. Immediately pulled some slight small bounces, no big deal, and then got absolutely crushed and covered it all, sub 4 from, 6s to now mid 3s. So another 50% or so, 40% or so pull there. And yeah, that's just 3 of them, guys. To save obviously time in this video, you get the gist. There was 3 of them. There was probably another 10 of those. Not all of them were that big of winners, but plenty of them were in the 5, 6, 7K range. Those are just some of the biggest. That was 13, 9K, and 9K. But yeah, hopefully you get the gist there. That pretty much started up until, there weren't as many this week, but these 2 weeks here, they really, really piled on. I wouldn't be shocked if I look back at the 23rd and the 24th has got those in there as well. But anyways, as we move on, let's go back to DJT for a second here, because I actually then did make some money on it. But again, we'll get into the rest of it because it'll be quite sad. Once it made this big red move and then started consolidating in the highs, or like very, very, very close. This was pretty impressive how well I thought it was holding. It then got brought up to my attention. I forget if it was someone in the Clover chat room or it was Huddy, which I guess he's in the Clover chat room, duh. But like, it was someone who brought it to my attention that DJT has not broken its previous day's lows pretty much since the run started. Like pretty much since October 2nd or 3rd, it has held its previous day's lows the entire time. Maybe it just briefly broke the lows here. What's the low of this day? 25.25, 25.11. So it just slightly broke the lows on the 15th. But then again, it started that trend again. New high, or day's low here was 27.30, then 28.51, then 29.18. Excuse me. Then 2019. Then 29.32. And so once I realized that, and then we started uptrending again, I was like, you know what? This just might break out again, and we might just get another one of these moves to say 40 plus. And so I get long. I end up having like a 32.80 something average. Make my ways up to 35. Unfortunately, instead of risking the previous day's low, I do get spooked out. I do end up selling it. Here's the entries. I pretty much get long in the morning in the low 32s, end up adding into the close to bring my average to the high 32s, and now I'm risking this low of, because the new day it's going to be the previous day's low, which is now today's low of 31.30 or something like that. And unfortunately, I don't stick to that. I end up looking at my P&L. I'm like, see that I'm up quite significantly, and I realize I can't afford to turn this. And well, context. The last 10 longs I've taken leading up to this trade have been losers. I'm like 0 for 10 on longs. So the fact that I go from 0 for 10 on longs to then nearly up 10K on a long, I'm like, this is turning too good too soon for a history of the last 2 months of longing that have just been terrible. I don't think I'm in the position to allow this to turn to a loser if it does pull all the way back and break yesterday's lows. So when it does break, well, when I take some small profit to kind of stay patient. But then when it sets this low here, I'm thinking, I get a little eager and I think, okay, maybe this will be the new previous day's low. Maybe it'll grind so higher up that I will never have to see these lows again, and that's my already new risk. So I try to be fancy with it to kind of keep gains from giving them back and said, hey, if this breaks low of day, let me just sell it all the rest of it. So I do partially fill here and then sell completely the rest of the stop out there, only for it to actually hold and then chop the rest of the day. However, it didn't really matter because if you look at the next day, which is on the 24th, it did actually break the previous day's low and then still rocket off to where I thought it was going to go, which was 40 plus. So, and again, I didn't rebuy. So unfortunately, I did lock in 8,800, but I think no matter how I would have played it, given my trade plan, it just was going to be wrong because I would have stopped out obviously on the 24th and then missed this move. So the mistake maybe for me was just not rebuying it, right? Because this breakout actually ended up being pretty clean. I didn't think it was going to be that clean, which is why I didn't buy it. That was a mistake. And lo and behold, we had a very awesome move. So that was one of them. So that ended up helping with an $8,800 profit on DJT. However, if you're not watching DJT, you probably were also watching Fun. Fun was a very solid red day. However, I have good feelings, but also slightly mixed feelings about it. And I'll talk to you why. So this was a breakout I missed and honestly shouldn't have. This was a beautiful, beautiful breakout. Immediately the next day, it's up, almost 100% from 8 to into the 13s. I don't get short though until the 23rd. And I do so because it was showing early signs of like a top doji day candle. And clearly that's kind of what happened. If you've been following me along on that particular idea, a lot of significant tops and a lot of very solid runners have put in that kind of top day where longs get chopped out, shorts get chopped out, it clearly can't go higher, and the next day it gaps down or sells off for a beautiful first red day. And so when we were very weak here, in midday, I thought to myself, you know what? It's doing exactly what that kind of top doji day candle would do. Let me start getting short. So I started getting short in like the mid to high 13s. Ultimately, I end up covering it for a loss because, typically they should start downtrending in after hours for it, signifying a gap down. The fact that this was closing right at the highs of after hours, I was like, that's not good, because in the event it actually does gap out to 15, 16, 17, that is a risk I do not want to take. I want to feel like I'm in a cushion. I want to feel like I'm being already proven right before the next day even happens in after hours price action. So I did take my loser there. Right, you can see it here. Actually getting short fairly early. I don't even remember getting short here. Actually, I only remember getting short here. But yeah, tried to position myself better. Thought it was going to break down here because it did actually make a new low, but held up. Downsized some, then cut some more, kind of being kind of a little bit emotional. I should have stuck to my risk up here, but then reshort when it dies. Unfortunately, that comes back. Covering some, downsizing some. Again, I fell into the trap of what I think most other longs and short sellers do, which is like they think it should die, but then it doesn't, so they cover. Then they think it's going to die again, so they cover. When the reality is, most times when I've traded this pattern, this idea that I have, it's like, get short, risk as high as possible or as wide as possible that I think is a good risk level, because ultimately it chops everyone up and the next day it actually shows its hand and it's usually to the downside, especially after you're up from, again, we were up from 4s, from 3s. We were plenty overextended by this point at 14. So ultimately I lost like a little over 8K on that trade, but it was immediately proven right? I wake up at the market open in pre-market, and I'm immediately seeing gapping down. I'm like, yep, this is what I thought would happen. It's unfortunate. I just got myself chopped up a bit. And then most importantly, it closed right at the highs. Even if I hadn't got myself chopped up, I would 100% have been covering here. Like I can't, even though my thesis was right, I can't stand the fact that I can't put myself in that risk of it gapping up as convicted as I could have been of a gap down. It's just not worth it, right? But immediately when I get to my desk, I'm immediately short. I short full size. Seriously. We go here. Let me just pull it up. Don't even need to start in. I'm like, yep, this is it. I was short from the high 13s. Maybe it's in the low 13s now, but who cares? Like, just get short. Boom. Full size. Very rare I do that. Rarely I do that, but I did it for the context that I just shared with you guys of like, clearly my thesis was right. Yes, was the after hours price action just not, favorable to me, but nonetheless, I was like, okay, now we're right. I'm proven to be right. Let's just get short. Here's where the conflicting feelings about it happen. And this is my fault here. Then the PR about the CEO retiring comes out. That's this little poll right here. At first, I saw the news and thought, and misread the PR or misread the news. I got heard from it from a friend. I didn't even read the PR yet. And it said like, I immediately thought, oh my God, the CEO got fired or the CEO quit. I thought super negative news. And so I immediately was going to almost starting to add. Then I pulled up the PR and it read, CEO retires, new CEO getting replaced. And that was my biggest mistake because when I read retired, and that's why I titled this, right? I said CEO retired up top here. That aggressiveness to want to add short completely went away. I was like, oh, it happens all the time. CEOs retire, move on. They've already got a replacement CEO ahead of myself. Like essentially my trade plan didn't change. I just stayed short with what I had and I just kept the trade plan of what I had. I should have known better that most people would take that negatively. Again, I took that as way too relaxed of a sentiment shift. I was like, whatever, it happens all the time. Dumb. Like most people, especially anyone who's like super bullish on PHUN, is probably going to see that differently and it's going to get ugly. Obviously, I didn't find that out till after hindsight, but when it happened, I'm like, Kyle, you idiot. Like that's why this went much lower than you expected and you didn't account for that. So mistake on my part. Either way, I was convicted on at least it going to 11 on the day. So that's why you see once it starts breaking 11 in this panic-like fashion, I do cover the rest of it. Locked in just under 20 grand. So still a good trade for me. One of the better red day profits of the month for me here. In fact, probably the best. So I'm still happy about it. Where I'm upset is I didn't either think about adding size or being more aggressive because clearly there were plenty of bounces in the 12 plus range to do so. And even if I didn't add, I think then there's two components here. It's either adding more size due to the PR or being more patient to the downside because of the PR. And I probably could have done a little bit of both. So it would have been adding, size into any one of these bounces on 12 plus. It then probably would have moved my average cover or my goal for 11 or sub 11 to probably sub 10. There's no way I would have held for 8. When I went to sub 9, I was like, wow, this is getting really crushed. But I probably would have waited for sub 10 and got somewhere in here, these covers. Probably most of it right here. Right? Because I definitely probably would have already been out and avoided this bounce, and then I would have saw it go lower and be like, damn, it's actually super, super weak. So one of those things where, again, I'm happy to make 20K, not so thrilled that I just kind of didn't care too much about the PR of the CEO retiring. Had he said quitting or leaving or got fired, yeah, I mean, that's a no-brainer for me. I was like, okay, great, we're going to like double our size now. Again, I just was too lackadaisical about it, right? It was too my conscience was too kind. I was like, oh, it happens all the time. Like, no, this is a piece of crap company and the CEO's leaving, Anyways, to continue the trading, took a loser on MTEM. MTEM, let's pull it up. MTEM was really frustrating because this was one of the gap and craps that started off good, turned bad, and then turned into a swing trade. Not necessarily because I changed my trade plan, but because my trade plan from the beginning was bad, and then I just had to restructure how I entered and exited to then see that trade plan play out. Unfortunately, I traded so poorly on this day that it still resulted in a loser. Had I still been holding, it would be a winner, but again, the whole reason why I was convicted in the first place is because this company, on this gap down from 150 down to 30s, was saying that they're going to dissolve as a company. Like it's very rare for this to happen, but companies will come out and say sometimes like, hey, you know what? We've tried to do business. It clearly isn't working. We're not going to go bankrupt. We're just going to give up. Like we're just going to dissolve the company, sell our assets, pay whoever we need to pay, and just the stock will be no more. And so when it's gapping up into the 60s here, pre-market on again, off of this, the drug momentum, I'm like, this is a great opportunity because it's like almost, a short seller like me looks at it as free money. Now, the problem is I think a lot of short sellers viewed that because clearly it squeezed much higher in the short term and then finally sold off. And so I really screwed it up on not thinking of that dynamic of like, I might not be the only short seller thinking this and causing this squeeze. Because frankly, to be totally honest, I was very close to a max stop out. I mean, I got really caught off guard here, to show you the trade. Get short at the open, cover it for my first like 10K loser, reshort, downsize some to lock in the profit, reshort the what I covered here, only to then see it rip. And I'm like, holy crap, this is scary. Cover out, pretty much at 1 and 1 plus. Then I see the blow off move. I'm like, okay, this is when I start realizing like, hey, I wasn't clearly the only short seller thinking this, but once they're blown out, then I will get reshort and it will be all, hunky-dory dandy, and I'll cover on a swing trade back down to the lows because clearly they're not going to be a stock in like less than, I think in the PR it said by the end of October, early November, we will stop being a stock. So that also was a fear of mine of like, I don't want to swing it, but I will to the very last minute because, there will be people who want to sell this thing. Otherwise, they'll lose all their money. So did get reshort, covered some. Don't love this re-add back. Like I didn't even let it bounce at all to re-add back. So that kind of screwed me. And then when it came back again, I was like in shock. I was like, wow, is there that many short sellers in this, including myself? Clearly, I'm part of the problem. That just won't die. Like this thing just keeps squeezing back. And so I cut it again. Thankfully, because of this cover and then me getting out before high of day, this whole entire second or third short here, I should say, was a break-even trade. Had it been a loser, it probably would have put me over my max stop. At this point, I've lost, after this big, huge slippage of over $1, I was already in the negative high 30s, negative 40K range. Like I was practically there. Like one more 10K loser, I was going to be over 50K and it was going to be done. And then so it blows out one more time, and then this is also right into the close. And so I think to myself, I'm like, again, partly due to stubbornness to get to this point, be losing too much, but then still conviction of like, this thing won't be a stock in 2 weeks. And again, this is my curse. This is my gift to my curse. So it's like, I still thought to myself, like, this, once you get enough people to give up, this will get crushed. And so what do? I give it one last chance. One last chance. I say, guess what? If I stop out of this one, I will get max stopped. I will be over. But this is into the close. I see this thing fading in after hours because, most of these, especially not just given that this ticker was, going to cease to exist in 2 weeks. Most of these DRUG sympathies or huge gappers that happen in the following weeks, none of them lasted a day, right? Even the ones that didn't necessarily crap super hard, it was like maybe they hung around a little bit, but then the next thing they're gapping down another 20, 30%. The momentum was so short-lived that like I just had conviction. I just believed in this thesis. And so I gave it one more shot. Finally, after hours, we fade, get a little bit of confirmation, make some lower lows below this previous low. And then I swing for, the next week or so. Took some time, a little bit of bouncing, and then finally we started fading. I ended up covering it all in like somewhere in the 50s here. Unfortunately, after such the big loss, I still lose 12K. It's fine. I honestly, again, you could argue I deserve a max stop here. I kind of got lucky that this last time was the final time. So in some cases, I felt like I won on it because I did dodge a bigger loser by making some back. But ultimately, I'm not upset for taking a loss in this. Again, partly, you can hear in my voice, I kind of deserve it. So losing 12K, I'll eat that right in the chest. And that was part of this month, or this week, I should say. So without further ado, the last week ends up being the biggest week of the month. However, it feels like the worst, and we will go over exactly why. So I think you can guess why. DJT. Actually, before we go over DJT, LTBR. LTBR was the first red day that I made 9K on. This was one of the trades I just want to mention because it was a solid red day. But I also underestimated it because I told myself there's a world where I can keep shorting it for multiple red days, given that it has a very good history of it. Didn't do that, and now I regret it because went from 10 to the 7s. So what I did do, though, was short it from the 12s and covered down towards 10. Not great risk reward because it did spike and like practically double top at 14, but just a very solid daily chart that just respects red-green. And then when it went red-green right here in the low 12s, never looked back, ended up covering here sub 11 for a 9K profit. If we just look at, MTEM, I keep forgetting to show the chart of the swings. Covered that day, when it went sub 50 or sub 60. So we can cover that. And then LTBR here, right? Fortunately got short a little too early in pre-market, but did risk the previous day's highs. That saved my ass from taking a loss. Then added on the red-green moved my risk down to pretty much either this lower high at 1350 or this last little lower high at like high 12s. And then covered the rest here for a 9K profit. So nice one there. But without further ado, let's get rid of all these charts. Let's just pull up DJT. Let's solely focus on DJT. So, like I said, sold my long, then it parabolics or blow off tops from 35 all the way up to 55. I'm bullish, or not bullish. I'm bearish at this point. The blow-off is happening. Everyone's getting very hypish and excited that Trump might win the election. His poll odds, or the numbers of his polls are projecting to win is going up. I noticed that, but that's going to be a very key mistake I make later down in this trade here. So on the top day, what happens? I have noticed, and I'm sure most people have noticed, that when this thing gaps up big, it's usually the top. Okay, so when it went from DWAC to DJT, it gapped from 49 all the way up to 71. Beautiful red day. Again, not necessarily red on the day, but a very beautiful red candle. Okay, same thing here. I forget what news with this was, but it got from 30 to 45. Never had much of a morning spike out the open. Red candle. Okay, same thing here on the 15th, right, the day I took my 10K loser. This gap up from 30 to 32 doesn't sound like a lot, but it technically is one of the bigger gap ups we've seen in the run up. And so lo and behold, you get blow off volume and it actually sells off quite beautifully. So the fact that now we're gapping up from 47 up to 54 was now game on for me. I was like, okay, this is going to die. Let's get a little bit aggressive and try to make some money. So very happy with the first half of this trade. The second half, not so much. So if we pull up the chart here, and why I'm so happy with this trade is because for once on these particular tickers, I tend to be, what's the word? A little bit antsy, a little bit too much too soon, and I get chopped up on this chop. Because if we look at the ticker, right, there's clearly a lot of up and down before an actual trend gets made, right? It's straight down, straight up, straight down, straight up. Sometimes I will tend to be on the opposite spectrum of this, where I maybe short lows, I cover highs, I short lows again, I cover highs. Instead, finally this time, I am on the opposite. I am ping-ponging it in the correct way, and you can see that in my trades here. Get short on a starter right before the open. Didn't think it was going to pull. That's why I had the starter on, because I was like, wide risk either way. I just want to see what it does, but I want to have some on. It pulls. It pulls so much that I decided to cover, half of my shares. I have 2,000 shares here. I cover 1,000. Okay. Immediately lock in like 3K from 53, 54 down to 50. Great. It spikes. It halts up. I short a little bit, some of that spike. I then short some more as it halts down. Again, because I've locked some in, I only have 1,000 shares or about so into this halt up, or now 2,000 after this ad. I'm like, great, I have some locked in. I have the same pretty much average or the same, position that I had out the open. I can afford for this to go up to 57 max. Didn't even get close, right? I add some more out the halt, and then pulls massively from, instead of low at 8 being around 50, it goes to 48. I cover some more again. And so now I've got even more locked in. And so when it keeps bouncing back, I am just kind of recycling back and forth shares while locking in profits. I'm getting a cushion. Again, I'm on the opposite. Instead of shorting lows, I'm covering lows. I feel very, very good about it. Finally, we start to roll over officially. I do actually fat finger here. I end up taking, instead of having 5K shares short, I end up having 10K shares short. How I fat fingered, I don't know, but all I knew was I immediately looked on my screen, seeing 10K shares instead of 5K shares. I'm like, whoa, that's too big. Immediately covered those shares here. You could say in hindsight, man, Kyle, how do you only held those and then cover those here? Would have been a sick gain. Yes, but in the event it holds here, like one of these moves, I would have been, very regretful if I held on to those and been greedy. So I did cover those right away. Then cover the rest of my, I should almost all my shares here, except for 2K shares left. So I pretty much go down from 5K to 2K. Unfortunately, I told myself, like, hey, this is a significant bottom. You need to be covering it all out. I put my order in at 45. By that time, it's already at 46. I didn't chase. I should have. I felt it in my bones. I'm like, you probably should get out. But I unfortunately then thought, well, let me just get out on the next pullback after a bounce. Because a lot of times after these kind of have this big bounce, or this big pullback, there will be a big bounce, but then there will be some significant higher low get set. So it will bounce up to here, maybe to VWAP, and then it'll give me one more pull that will set some kind of higher low off the low of day, whether it be 45, 46, 47, is what I was thinking. And so that's why you see me add into this bounce into the 48, 49 range, because I'm thinking, okay, short 48, 49, risk into the low 50s. It should give me one roll over to sub 47, maybe 46, 45, and then I'll get out the rest and lock in my profits officially and be done with the trade. Obviously, that's not what happened. This bounce just kept going. And the only thing I could chalk it up to is that there were just a ton of shorts like myself thinking that bounce is going to happen, and it just doesn't. And so people get squeezed and squeezed and squeezed, and ultimately I ate it. And now my mistake is that I would now, with a cushion, I locked in 35K here, all these covers, it's all said and done, with another 10K unrealized from the 2K I had left. So practically I'm pushing 45, 50K profit between realized and unrealized. So again, I'm pretty much adding all my size back, if not more here. I think I actually had 6K. Yeah, I think every one of these candles was 1,000. So I had 2K already short, add another 4K short. I have 6K now from 49.50, somewhere in this range, this price range right here. End up eating it 53 when I should have only eaten it at 52. I give a lot back. It went from a 35K gain to then an 11K gain. So mistake number one, risking way too much on the bounce because I had a cushion in the name of, having a cushion, feeling more aggressive. Would I not take the short? No. 9 times out of 10, this bounce will roll over. I think this is once an example where the stock was very strong. There were just too many short sellers in it that caused this bounce to go just straight up practically with no significant pullback or lower low. But yeah, just shouldn't have risked that much on the bounce, right? Shouldn't be giving back 70% of my gains, right? Ideally would have given back 5 to 10K, and so I'd still be up 25, 30K on the trade. Now, we could play hypotheticals here. Had this actually done what most bounce shorts do and pull back, yeah, it easily would have been a 50K plus trade. That would have been one of the bigger winners of the month for me, and I would have been very happy about it. So not a big deal. However, now the question is, okay, does this go higher? Does this go lower? This is, again, even though it's not exactly as the PHUN, this sell-off is not what happened on PHUN. You can't deny, though, that this daily or this daily chart is a top daily wick kind of red candle, right? Just like we talked about in PHUN. So why I didn't short overnight, I don't know, guys. I was prepared to do it on PHUN, but PHUN didn't have favorable price action into the close or into after hours. DJT kind of did. It closed well off its highs, and by after hours, yes, it was technically indicating a gap up from the close, but it was well off its 54 highs. And not only that, it broke high a day on this bounce over 54 by like 10, 20 cents and never got higher. That's like and even tried to. Again, at late day, this looks like it should just rip faces off, and it doesn't. It does the exact opposite. That was a very, very just big signal of like, hey, this is probably weaker than most people expect. And the only thing I chalk it up to not holding it overnight is because I just exhaust myself and giving too much away on the bounce. I told myself I will not touch this the rest of the day because in the event I give more gains back, it will become unacceptable. So that's partly my problem here, which is like giving too much away on the bounce, almost in some ways exhaust myself from allowing myself to give it one more try on an overnight thesis that we just saw on PHUN. So that when it gaps down, I'm like, damn it, like that was the play. Now, it gets worse. I know this is getting a very long video. I warned you guys. This day was on my all-day webinar for Clover Trader or for Clover students. So anyone who bought the all-day webinar, you had access to me and Huddy all day long. We started the webinar. I was in a different location. I was not in this particular desk right here, mainly because I was worried there was a lot of noise going on all day, a lot of construction, and for it's fine if it's for 1 hour, which I usually do for Clovers, but like for an all-day kind of thing, I was like, I need to be somewhere a little bit separate, a little more private, and so I went to another location that I have traded at before. Lo and behold, 5 minutes into the webinar, the Wi-Fi just zit out. Google won't even load for me. And so I call up Huddy. I'm like, hey, run the webinar. I am literally going to sprint back to my house being here. And, I'll be back when I be back. So literally pack up my laptops, pack up my things, throw it all in the car. Practically, I don't speed home, but I drive fairly legally fast. Get back. I finally get back to my screens roughly right around here. I join the webinar. I start talking about my trade plans for the day, telling people like, hey, DJT's gapping down is not surprising to me. This could easily have a sell-off, at least somewhere near the 46, 45 range. Probably try to retest these lows. I should be getting short. And that is right here. And so the moment I share my plan and I immediately try to execute it, it pulls. And I'm like, and again, that's really not my fault. I should have maybe put my teaching to the side and be like, get the hell short at 29 or at 49. Instead, I wait 2 minutes, 2-3 minutes, and then it starts breaking down below sub 48. I don't want to chase because risk reward wise now it just doesn't seem. I hate telling myself I'm going to get short in the 48s to 49 to then immediately see it at pretty much 47.50 and be like, okay, I'm still going to short it here. So didn't short it there. Then I see it pull where I think it would go to, which is like 45, 44. I'm like, damn it, that would have been a 10K plus winner. Excuse me. But this is the biggest mistake of all, is that even with the red day, I still thought to myself, and maybe this is my fault of being so discombobulated with the Wi-Fi going out, rushing home, I didn't even think to look at the pull projections. Right? I knew it was going up because the pull projections were increasing, but I didn't even think to look at them now. And I think that was the massive mistake, because if I'm not mistaken, and someone brought it to my attention after the fact, that's when the pull numbers started going back down, right? And so when we have a trade here that is so, it's so unique, right? It's not every day we're trading, one, a presidential election, but two, that one of the candidates has its own stock that just went on a 300% run in the same month, right? And now his poll projections are going down. And when they went up is what caused the run. I mean, that's what caused this massive, massive move well below yesterday's lows. Not 43, but 38, like 36 in after hours. I just didn't even think about it. So either way, even had I shorted and didn't have to deal with the Wi-Fi issues that I dealt with, I would have been short, 49.50, covered it like 45 and be like, yep, awesome. And then would have watched it get destroyed and been like, what the hell happened? What did I miss? So that's the other part of it where either way, I really screwed this one up. However, where I did make money was the long. I actually did buy it on this kind of capitulation sub 40, ended up selling it all in like the 42s, 43s. That was a lot of fun. That was a good long. I'm really happy with that one. That's right here. Okay. That's right here. So didn't even touch a short. Like I said, completely whiffed due to Wi-Fi's and then due to expectations, due to lack of looking at the polls. Didn't even touch it short. But I did make 11 candle long, so that was nice. The issue now here is that this has now got even weaker. So the polls have gotten weaker, the projections got weaker. They've gotten so weak that I'm just in shock, and it makes sense based on projections solely alone. But from turning into one of the strongest stocks to practically almost like round tripping at this point, from at least where the breakout was, it's just impressive. And that pretty much concludes my month. But that's why we started now November on a unfortunate note of negative 15K, because I've tried to continue to long it. I tried longing it into, this day, thinking it was going to be a bounce day, and it wasn't. So a bit frustrating. I don't want to try to play guessing games now for what I think is going to happen. There's going to be volatility either way, I would imagine, whether he wins or loses or whatever. It's going to move. I just unfortunately screwed it up so badly on the short side. Totally underestimated how weak it could actually get. To the point where I thought this is too much too soon. Let me try to buy it. And now I'm giving away money on the long side. So very frustrating, very unfortunate. If I could go back and do a redo, I would love to, obviously, because had I just paid a little bit more attention, being on the top day here, not dealing with the Wi-Fi scenario, and then cherry on top, actually looking at the poll numbers, this could have been a very different scenario. How big, or I don't know, but very similar to PHUN, it could have been much, much bigger than a 20K red day. Talking 30, 40, maybe 50. So bit frustrating there. Like I said, really no clue what's going to happen at forward here. I've kind of accepted the fact that my reads the last 3 or 4 days have not been great, and so I should stick to that. I should not think I know what's going to happen, because I just don't. But anyways, that's that. So very happy with how the month turned out, but obviously a little bit of a bittersweet ending for the reason of not necessarily the P&L, but how I've traded. This doesn't feel great. But yeah, hopefully just volatility will continue. Historically, election years are pretty good. So regardless who wins, I'm feeling quite overall bullish on just general opportunities that will maybe appear, hopefully, in the next couple coming months. And yeah, thanks so much for watching, guys. This was indeed a long one, like I thought. Again, to keep everyone update on the stride to 1 million, we are, 70K away. So we're close. We have any 2 decent Novembers and Decembers, we could do it. Again, won't be too upset if I don't. If it happens, great. If it doesn't, oh well. Still, I could end the year now and be pretty darn happy with how we're doing in terms of monetary value to my life. So, yeah, I'll stop rambling now. Thanks for watching. If you made it to the end, you are a true fan or a true student. Thank you for listening to me babble on for about an hour plus now. And yeah, have a great November, and we will do this all again next month. Peace out, everybody. Bye.